You might imagine that gold, once minted, simply sits in vaults or gets melted down, inert, immutable. But what if I told you that for over a millennium, through invasions, plunder, civil wars, regime changes, and economic collapse, a system of Byzantine bankers and gold management quietly kept gold alive as a circulating currency? That behind the stone walls of Constantinople, far from the battlefields, a hidden financial machinery bore the weight of an empire until its final unraveling? And what if, in that unraveling, lie warnings for our modern age of monetary crisis? This is the story of the Byzantine bankers, how gold survived 1,000 years of war, a story of continuity and failure, of trust and betrayal, of gold's endurance and its eventual demise. What allowed gold to remain viable for centuries in a war-torn world? And what finally broke that system? The answer is not simple, and in the twists lie lessons that echo today. Let's start by going back in time. To understand the Byzantine gold system, we must begin with Rome. The Roman Empire had long used gold and silver coins in a layered monetary system. When Constantine the Great came to power in the early 4th century, he reformed the coinage and issued a new gold coin, the Solidus. It replaced older gold types and was struck with remarkable consistency and purity, around 445 grams of nearly pure gold. This coin became the backbone of Byzantine and later medieval trade. Over the next centuries, the Eastern Roman Empire continued minting gold, silver, and bronze coins in a balanced monetary system. But central to their success was the reputation of the gold coin. Merchants, foreign courts, and even distant kingdoms accepted the bezant, the Western name for the Byzantine gold, as an international standard. For centuries, the Byzantine gold coin was a safe haven during wars or political sieges. Chaos, the Solidus remained a bedrock of trust. That stability was not an accident. It was engineered. Beneath the imperial mint lay a network of argentarii, trapezitai, money changers, and financiers operating in cities like Constantinople, Alexandria, and Ravenna. These early bankers took deposits, exchanged currencies, extended credit, and managed remittances. They were the invisible infrastructure behind Byzantine finance. One papyrus from Alexandria even records depositors placing gold with trapezitai for profit, a primitive savings account in gold. In times of war or liquidity crisis, these money keepers coordinated with tax collectors and imperial officials to keep the system functional. The Byzantine gold system wasn't just state-driven minting. It was a partnership between the government, merchants, and private financiers. And it worked for centuries. But before we see how it failed, we must trace how it began. From the 5th to 7th centuries, the Byzantine world endured almost constant turmoil, barbarian invasions, plagues, wars with Persia, and later Islam. The state's revenues were squeezed. Many provincial mints were lost. By the mid-7th century, only Constantinople and a few loyal mints survived. Yet under that pressure, the gold coin emerged stronger. When silver and bronze coins lost value, gold held steady. Merchants trusted it. Foreign rulers demanded it. So the Byzantine state leaned on its one unshakable asset, the gold solidus. Because the solidus remained stable in weight and purity, it became the international anchor of trade. A merchant in Venice, a caliph in Baghdad, and a king in France could all accept a Byzantine gold coin with confidence that it was real, pure, and consistent. It was the world's de facto gold standard centuries before the term existed. By the 9th to 11th centuries, Byzantium reached its monetary golden age. The sol, idus, was known across continents as the bezant. For nearly 700 years, its gold content remained remarkably consistent. It was the coin of commerce, diplomacy, and empire. During this era, Byzantium experimented with two variants, the tetarteron, a slightly lighter gold coin, and the histamenon, a heavier one. Both were officially equal in value, but the difference in gold content allowed the state to pocket the margin. In other words, an early form of seigniorage, a clever, subtle tax through coin design. Still, the system held strong. Merchants and soldiers trusted the gold coin. It was how the empire paid armies, bribed enemies, and financed its vast bureaucracy. The Byzantine Solidus was as stable as the empire itself, until the empire began to crack. By the late 10th and early 11th centuries, cracks appeared. Byzantium's military was overextended, fighting Turks in the east, Normans in the west, and rebels at home. The court grew extravagant, tax revenues strained. The empire needed more money than it could collect. So emperors did what desperate governments always do. They tampered with the money. They began to debase the gold coin. A little less gold here, a little lighter coin there. The changes seemed small at first. But by the mid-11th century, the Solidus was no longer solid. Under Emperor Michael IV and his successors, purity declined. By the 1070s, the once pure Solidus contained barely half its original gold. Confidence began to erode. Foreign merchants started weighing coins, discounting those they didn't trust. Arbitrage spread. The invisible web of trust that had held Byzantine money together began to unravel. At the same time, internal instability rocked the empire. Civil wars, coups, and financial crises disrupted fiscal order. By 1080, the Byzantine gold coin was barely recognizable, a ghost of its former self. In 1081, Alexios I Komnenos came to power. He inherited a bankrupt empire and a worthless coinage. His solution was drastic. He abolished the old coinage entirely and introduced a new gold stand, the hyperpyron. The hyperpyron, meaning super refined, was slightly less pure than the old Solidus, about 85% gold, but it was honest and consistent. For the first time in decades, people trusted the coin again. Alexios also reorganized lower-value coins in electrum, billon, and copper to restore a full currency hierarchy. The reform worked. For a century, the hyperpyron restored confidence in Byzantine finance. Trade revived. Tax collection improved. The empire regained its footing, for a time. But beneath the surface, the foundations were weaker than before. The new coin was slightly debased from the start, and over generations, emperors chipped away at its purity. Each time the empire faced crisis, rulers clipped a little more off the coin's integrity. Trust, once again, began to fray. Then came catastrophe. In 1204, during the Fourth Crusade, the unthinkable happened. Crusader armies, originally bound for the Holy Land, turned on Constantinople itself. The city was sacked, looted, and burned. Thousands were killed. The greatest treasure of Christendom was plundered. The conquerors melted down statues, chalices, and gold reserves. Historians estimate that roughly 900,000 silver marks, the equivalent of more than 3 million hyperpyra, were stolen. Tons of gold vanished overnight. Centuries of accumulated wealth were gone. The Byzantine Empire fractured into 3 successor states, Nicaea, Trebizond, and Epirus. Each issued its own coins and fought for legitimacy. The once centralized gold system shattered into pieces. The old network of bankers and money changers disintegrated. When the empire was restored in 1261, it was a shadow of its former self. The new rulers tried to revive the hyperpyron, but the gold supply was exhausted. They cut purity further, from 20 carats to 18, then 15, then 12. By the 14th century, the gold content was so low that the hyperpyron was practically bronze. It ceased to be minted around 1350, surviving only as a unit of account. The Byzantine gold tradition, once the envy of the world, ended not in a dramatic collapse, but a slow, quiet fade. The empire that had kept gold alive through 1,000 years of war lost its ability to mint it at all. Why did it fail? And how did it survive for so long before it did? Gold survived because Byzantium built institutions around it, mints, bankers, and rules that protected its credibility. For centuries, the empire refused to compromise on quality. A Byzantine coin was trusted from Cairo to Kiev because people knew what it was worth. Trust is the real currency. But gold failed because that trust was eventually broken. Successive emperors traded credibility for convenience, shaving the coin for short-term gain. And once that credibility cracked, no reform could fully repair it. Byzantine gold also failed because the empire's resource base collapsed. As mines dried up, trade routes shifted and tribute faded. There was simply less gold to go around. Reform without resources is an illusion. Finally, the empire itself fractured. When Constantinople fell in 1204, it wasn't just a political loss, it was a monetary one. Without a single trusted mint and strong central authority, the Byzantine world fragmented into competing currencies, each weaker than before. The result was monetary entropy, and eventually, collapse. Now, here's where the story hits closer to home. What Byzantium called debasement, we call inflation. What they did by reducing gold content, modern states do by printing more money. The principle is the same. When you expand the money supply without real backing, whether in gold or productivity, purchasing power erodes. Trust fades. And when trust fades, people flee to safe assets. Then and now, often gold. The Byzantine story mirrors modern crises. Think of Weimar Germany, where paper marks became worthless. Think of Venezuela, or Zimbabwe, where hyperinflation destroyed savings. Even in stable economies, gradual inflation chips away at value, just as debasement did in Byzantium. The 1204 sack of Constantinople also has a modern echo. When reserves are lost, whether through war, corruption, or unsustainable spending, a state's financial credibility collapses. Byzantium lost its gold reserves. Modern states lose their foreign reserves or their investor confidence. The result is the same: capital flight, currency crisis, and social chaos. There's also the issue of competing currencies. In late Byzantium, foreign gold coins, Venetian ducats, Genoese florins, began to circulate widely. People abandoned the hyperpyron for more reliable money. Today, when local currencies fail, people turn to dollars, euros, or cryptocurrencies. Once again, when trust in domestic money dies, people seek an external anchor. The Byzantine case shows that gold's endurance depended on more than metal. It depended on the institutions that maintained it. When those institutions eroded, when mints corrupted standards, when bankers fled, when enforcement broke down, even gold couldn't save the empire. So what can we learn from this 1,000-year experiment? First, trust is the real currency. You can issue the finest coin or the most advanced digital currency, but if people don't believe in it, it's worthless. For 7 centuries, Byzantium's Solidus held because people trusted it. When that trust broke, the empire's finances collapsed. Second, reform can buy time, but not forever. Alexios III's hyperpyron reform brought another century of stability, but it couldn't compensate for dwindling resources and constant debasement. In modern terms, you can rebrand your money, change interest rates, or restructure debt, but unless the fundamentals improve, collapse returns. Third, Fragmentation kills monetary systems. And the Byzantine Empire split after 1204, its unified currency network shattered. Each successor state had weaker money, less trust, and smaller reach. In our world, the same danger looms when monetary unions fracture or when parallel currencies emerge. Unity gives money strength, fragmentation drains it. And finally, a warning. We live in a world of digital money, fiat currencies, and massive debt. Our financial systems depend more than ever on faith. Faith in central banks, in governments, in numbers on screens. But faith is fragile. If trust falters, the system can unravel faster than anyone expects. The Byzantines thought their gold would last forever. They were wrong. Their story reminds us that even the most trusted currency can fail. Slowly at first, then all at once. So as we debate the future of money, from crypto to digital dollars, from inflation to gold reserves, remember the lesson of Constantinople. No currency, no matter how golden, survives without discipline, trust, and institutional strength. If you found this deep dive into Byzantine gold intriguing, make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video. Tell me in the comments, which modern currency or financial experiment reminds you most of the Byzantine collapse? Gold-backed money, crypto, or something else entirely? Because history doesn't repeat, but when it comes to money, it sure does rhyme. This was The Byzantine Bankers, How Gold Survived 1,000 Years of War. Thank you for watching.